Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Reate PLXE. This is actually my favorite of the bunch. I'm going to let you guys just look at the box here real quick so you can see what's going on. But this is actually my favorite of the, I guess the PLX whatever series. They have the thumb stud version, they have the flipper version, and they were okay. It's a cool idea. It's nice to see Reate enter not a budget space, but a more budget-friendly space, and still apply all of the same levels of complexity in their machining, the accuracy in their machining, just all of the quality that we expect from Reate at a much lower price. But the first two were okay, I guess, but this is superior. I love this knife. It's great. It's not, the pivot operated lock is really cool. It's not the ultimate super strongest lock in the world, but it'll stand up to a couple of light taps on the spine, which is all I require of it. But I think it feels a lot better than a standard plunge lock, and the whole knife is just very convenient and friendly to operate. So this is available in a few different configurations. I'm going to link it down in the description. You guys can check it out if you want to. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks to Reate for sending this in. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this knife. It's not small. Maybe they'll make a smaller version of this in the future, but for right now, 8¼ inches. Blade length is coming in at 3.5. Cutting edge is 3.3 inches. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. I said that a little funny. You can see here it's actually pretty big. It's nowhere near as bulky as something like the AD10. Let's put it up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. Again, pretty big, about the same overall size as the Spyderco PM2, and funny enough, it actually has very, very similar ergonomic lines. Look at this. Nearly a dead match for the hand zones. This part of the knife just comes back quite a bit further, but something very interesting, I think, for a lot of people who like Spyderco knives. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. So how's the action on this knife? It's really good. You push down the button there, the blade falls. It feels like super high quality, very smooth. I mean, I don't know that I would know immediately picking this up. I don't know that I'd be able to go, oh yeah, this is a Reate built knife. Because there's a lot of great knives, like a lot of great companies building knives in this space. But truthfully, it does feel very, very good. There are a lot of companies making locking systems that operate on the pivot, and they're all a little bit different. But essentially, you push the button down, and the part that's responsible for locking the blade moves out of the way, and then the blade goes down in a closed position. The D10 is also created by the locking mechanism. Oh, by the way, it does come with an extra pivot spring, because the pivot's under spring tension, right? But it does come with an extra one of those, as well as some extra hardware, some body hardware, things like that. But you push it down, the blade falls in the closed position, and it will fall all the way into the closed position just by holding the blade down. And then you can use this hole here to very easily wheel it out. You can do a reverse flick. The D10 that's created by the locking system works really, really well. Let's find out how well this blade, not that I plan on swinging this out or moving hard enough while this knife is in my pocket to actually get the blade to release without me wanting it to, but I really thought I could, hold on, I really thought I could whip this. So it takes an enormous amount of force. The D10 does not feel super heavy, but trying to get the blade to whip out, I honestly think that I could get my XM24, which has a much heavier feeling D10. I think I could get that blade to whip out this way easier than I did with this guy. So that's really good. That's nice. This is a good combination, a good setup here. It does have a safety, which I guess is in place just because in the choke up position, your index finger lands right on top of that pivot. So this isn't, it's like I always say, the safety here is not baton mode engaged. It's now you can use this knife in the choked up position without worrying that you're going to disengage the lock, because that's where your index finger lands, right? That's all it is. Otherwise it's just kind of in the way. It does take pretty deliberate, there's a deliberate amount of force that needs to be applied to this, so I don't think that this would disengage without intentionally disengaging it. Does it work in the closed position? No, it doesn't. It will not go all the way up in the closed position. So only in the open position is that going to do that. So yeah, I think the action's great. Carry profile, let's do thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It's pretty thick, but it's also radiused or contoured very nicely, textured very nicely. That's one of the only, well, there's a couple of key indicators that it's made by somebody who's doing a little bit extra than what you would normally expect of this territory. But anyways, yeah, it does fill the hand nicely. So, you know, even though it is a little thicker. Length and height up against the PM2 and the Para 3. Lengthwise, it's very similar to the PM2, maybe slightly shorter. Not quite as tall, though. Definitely larger than something like the Para 3. Let's go ahead and weigh it. What are we looking at for materials here? We're looking at Nitro V, which I think is fine. We have really nicely machined G10. It comes almost to a seam. Kind of looks like it's, you know, hovering together, I guess. It's actually held together with some screws and some standoffs back here. We do have full steel nested liners, which is a nice touch. It just all the way around has all those little teeny tiny high quality things that you wouldn't normally expect to find in the budget territory. Like I'm not gonna tell you guys that I completely and totally agree with the price tag, but it's worth pointing out all of the extra little things that they've done to this knife that make me strongly feel that it definitely does not belong at the budget price point, which is on this channel, it's 75 or less, right? A lot of people are going to say G10 and Nitro V, that should be a budget knife. But we have to acknowledge the extra effort here. I'm not 100% loving the final price tag. We'll talk about it, but it's still worth pointing out that Reate definitely did put enough effort here that I think it should be definitely more than $75. But we'll come back to that. So weight on this guy. The weight on the PLXE, we are looking at 4.6 ounces, which is not terrible, right? Balance is actually right behind the pivot, which is where it should be. Feels really, really good. Quite a bit of blade here for sure. Let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness. That looks pretty thick. I want to say that looks like at least 140. Let's find out. 150 thousandths or so. So it's a fairly thick blade, not ultra thick, but fairly thick. And then let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'll get out my tools as per usual. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. So the pivot on this knife is a T8, and then we have T8 body screws, which is awesome. Likely some additional screws underneath here holding these the standoffs in place, and those could be T6 possibly. I don't love that the hole, like this is a little bit irritating that the hole to access the screw is at an angle. Like what? Should be right on top. I can still get at it, but it's at an angle. It makes me feel like I'm going to strip it. So that's a little weird, right? So there's more than what I would consider to be minimal hardware here, but the majority of it is T8, which is good. In any case, it is not difficult to take this knife apart and put it back together. You want to take it completely apart, there's a pivot spring in there, but even that is really not that difficult to deal with. The safety can kind of slide out of place, so you do need to be aware of that. Far from impossible. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. Let's go ahead and move on to the meat and potatoes. This is a stupidly comfortable knife. Stupidly. Honestly, should have led with that. But this is one of the most comfortable EDC knives. It is such a friendly knife to use. Despite it having a thick blade stock, it does come down to a reasonably kind of medium thin edge, but it is so friendly. And that smooth finish, right? You can see we've got some tape and stuff from the last thing I cut. I don't just so you guys know, if you're new to my channel, I don't take these knives out and beat the crap out of them. I'm a design reviewer, and I'm a regular Joe. So I don't do, the crazy hardcore testing. We have a lot of great channels that are much better at stuff like that than me. But I generally review the design, and I have my own checklist for what I expect from an EDC knife. And I'm familiar with a lot of the different, variations in quality between these companies, and Reate is a company that I expect pretty high quality from. But the lockup is solid enough for me for what I'm going to do with it. And so what it comes down to for me is just general comfort, ease of manipulation, the general enjoyment I have, using the knife. And this is a knife that I love to use. I think it looks cool, but I think it's a little, that aesthetic joy is a little bit skewed. Sorry for the humming in the background. It's a little skewed by the fact that I just enjoy the ergonomics so much. I mean, that's what kind of won me over with Spyderco. I was like, wow, these knives are ridiculously ugly. And then I used them and I, figured out how much I enjoyed the ergonomics and how easy they were to manipulate. And now I'm like, Spydercos are cool. And I'm not sure that I think maybe I'm blind to how ugly they are now because I love them so much for how well they function as tools. And this kind of gives me that same vibe. Really nice. Also, when you lay the knife down flat, let's see if I can get something to demonstrate that. We use the Reate box. Laying the knife down flat on a surface, the very initial part of the cutting edge is the first thing to contact. Why is that important? If you decide to use this as like an in-the-moment food prep knife, maybe you're camping or you're out at the grill or whatever, this is great for being able to chop vegetables or whatever. Really, it's obviously not an ideal cooking knife, but it will do that, which is neat, right? Or if you have to do rock chopping or whatever, it's cool. I like that. Many pocket knives. In fact, the vast majority of pocket knives do not work well for food prep in a pinch. Again, this is not an optimized food prep pocket knife, but in a pinch, they don't work. And it's a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it is where that initial edge contacts the surface, right? Underneath whatever it is that you're trying to cut. So I do like that. I think that's really neat. Admittedly, it's not something that I needed to use it for. I just wanted to point it out. Reate does an absolutely incredible high polished tumbled finish, and it's awesome that you can get that on this knife. I think it's matched only at this price point by what Kaiser does. Like Kaiser does a really good one too, but I really appreciate that. It's almost fully flat ground, lots of belly, very slight. I mean, as slicey a knife like that this can be, but it was pretty effortless pushing it through material. It's got a nice tip on it. It doesn't start to get real thin until about right here. So not like the most durable tip in the world, but it does feel good for what, it's for what I'm going to use it for. Choking up on this knife and using the jimping is awesome. It's simply awesome. This is so accommodating to the human hand. Back here, choked up, doesn't matter. Pocket clip, almost perfection. Drop, slight bill, rounded off. You can flip it over to the other side. Lefties, you can use this too, right? In fact, lefties choking up, you kind of have to worry about like your pad's going to end with it. Either way, you just engage the safety. I never had this disengage. Anytime that I flipped it out and I wanted to use it like this, I felt my index finger as a right-handed person. Left-handed people, you might be a little less aware of it since it's back here on the pad. But as a right-handed person, I would feel my index finger touch that button. I go, oop, I don't want to disengage it. I'm going to engage that safety. I always remembered to do it, never had an issue, but it is something that you need to be aware of. Really nice. This actually will create functional like traction, so that's nice. I love the little lines that go around the screws and kind of highlight. Like the screws are in a place that's a little bit of an eyesore, but it's kind of neat that they milled those lines around them and just gave that area a little bit of character. The filler tab, like the transition from the G10 to the filler tab, like it's all. The fit and finish of that area is very, very nice. Like nothing about this knife looks sloppy or feels sloppy at all. In and out of the pocket, super smooth. Even though it's slightly riding on texturing, it's very easy to get this thing in and out of the pocket. Really, really nice. There's a lanyard hole back there, so if you like lanyards, great. Stop pin is located in its traditional position. There is absolutely no blade play up, down, left, or right. At the slightest bit of stick from this lock, but I feel like that's going to see, even right now it doesn't really feel like anything. I would say it's like on a scale of 1 to 100, I'd give it like a 5. It's almost nothing. Is there any pivot lash? There is not. Very smooth and consistent in here. Here's the detent being created by the lock. It looks light, but it's absolutely perfect for manipulating the knife, especially if you like to slow roll it or wheel it out, right? Whatever you want to call that. Really cool. So, and it also has maintained absolutely perfect centering the entire time I've had it with no detent lash. So, what's the final price tag? $122. I love this knife, and I think anybody who buys it is also going to love it. It's weird that pocket clip hole is at an angle, so if you ever have to take it off or switch it, it's a little bit annoying, right? The pivot you really have to pay attention to and make sure that you have engaged that safety if you're going to choke up and use it really hard, because you do not want it disengaging, obviously. That's it. It's G10 and Nitro V, I get it, but there's so much obvious extra effort here. You'd have to intentionally be ignoring it. It's just, there's not a knife under $75 that has this build quality, at least not that I can think of, right? Some of the most competitive options versus this knife that use similar materials and have similar, tolerances, not necessarily the extra embellishment, but the Vosteed Raccoon top liner lock and the Civivi Vision FG. Do I think this knife is better than those? I don't. I think those still are better value. And honestly, I think that there's plenty of knives out there that might be better value. But $122 for this isn't bad. I think I would have really been impressed if Reate got this to about $100. But that, I feel like I keep saying the same thing over and over again, especially at this price point. I wish it was $20 less, right? So I don't love the price tag, but then again, it's really impressive and it's hard to compare it with a lot of stuff. We also have to remember that at the $120 mark, there are plenty of knives out there that are G10 and S35 VN, or even like CJRB has the S90V Pyrite in injection mold plastic for $80. So if you reduce it to the value of materials, I can see why some people wouldn't be super excited there. But for people who appreciate the extra, like the Pyrite doesn't have nearly the amount of work involved with this. Like, this is just an obviously much nicer knife, despite Nitro V not being a steel that can really stand up to what S90V brings to the table, right? So I would have loved to see this at $100, but then again, I'm not sure how possible that was. Ultimately, it comes down to, yada, 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 MC, do you recommend it? Yeah, I do. I do recommend this. I think you're gonna basically be handing them $100 and then an extra 20, and you're going to have to grit your teeth through that extra 20, but I think you're going to be really happy owning this knife. I think this is excellent. It's a quality tool. It feels really good, and it's the best in the PLX whatever series, in my opinion, from Reate, definitely. It would be awesome if they could do something different with the safety, right? Make it, maybe you could set it to auto-engage somehow. That would be really, really cool. Or, there's just like, it's essentially locked until you have a different type of release. Like it's cool that it's on the pivot, but there's just this unfortunate issue where your index finger in the choke up position, which is a position where this knife is meant to really excel. It just sucks that your finger lands on that and you have to engage that safety, right? Something to consider right there at the end. But ultimately, yes, I recommend this knife. And it's going to go in my recommended knives playlist. That's going to be it today, guys. Links for this and all of the different variations down in the description. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.